Sometimes I sit in my kitchen and I feel relieved that nobody needs me anymore. And then I feel ashamed for feeling relieved. I didn't expect that part. I used to think peace would feel warm, like something you earn, like a room you finally get to rest in. What I have now is quieter than that. It's not warm. It's just no noise, no tugging, no pretending, no waiting for the phone to ring and then getting angry when it does. I didn't always live this way. When I was younger, I was busy. I was the kind of woman who kept moving because stopping felt like failing. I knew where the towels went. I knew what day the trash went out. I knew which kid needed shoes and which kid had a cough. I knew how to hold myself together in public. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't careless. I loved my family. I did the things people do. I cooked. I cleaned. I showed up. I remembered birthdays. I took pictures. I wrote thank you notes. I did all the little respectable things that make a life look solid from the outside. And I truly believed that meant I was doing it right. I believed that if I kept the house running and the meals coming and the bills paid, the rest would just happen. The closeness, the softness, the parts you can't schedule, I thought that would arrive on its own later. When the kids were older, when the money was better, when we had more time. I said later so many times that it stopped sounding like a real word. My husband used to come home and talk about his day, not in big speeches, just small things. Problem with a coworker, a funny moment in the parking lot, a mistake he made. He didn't demand much. He just wanted me there with him for a minute. And I was there. Technically, I'd keep stirring a pot. I'd keep wiping a counter. I'd keep folding a shirt. I'd answer with little sounds. I'd nod. I'd say, and that's something, and can you believe that I thought that counted? I didn't notice when his stories got shorter. I didn't notice when he started telling them to the dog instead of me. I told myself it was normal. People get tired. People have routines. People don't always talk like they did when they were young. I used the word normal like a blanket. I covered everything with it. There were moments I could have reached for him. I remember them, not as dramatic scenes, just as small chances, a hand on his shoulder while he stood at the sink, sitting down for 5 minutes instead of keeping myself busy, asking one more question, looking at his face when he answered. But I was always trying to finish something. Even when the kids were small, I was always trying to finish something. Clean clothes, clean floors, clean plates, clean feelings. I didn't want mess. Not in the house, not in conversations. If someone was upset, I smoothed it over. If someone was angry, I changed the subject. If someone cried, I offered food. If my husband got quiet, I pretended I didn't see it. If I got quiet, I called it being fine. I didn't grow up in a home where people sat and talked about their feelings. We didn't have that kind of language. You worked. You kept going. You didn't complain unless something was truly broken. So I treated everything that wasn't bleeding as something to ignore. It wasn't that I didn't feel things. I felt everything. I felt tired. I felt overlooked. I felt like the only adult in the room some days. I felt scared about money. I felt jealous of women who looked like they had help. I felt angry when nobody noticed what I did. And I swallowed it. I swallowed it so well that I forgot it was there. It sank into me and sat. It showed up later as sharpness in my voice, as impatience, as the way I could make someone feel small without raising my volume. I never yelled much. I didn't have to. I could do it with a look. I could do it with silence. I could do it by being busy when someone wanted to talk. Silence is a strange thing. It can look like peace from a distance. It can look like maturity. It can look like strength. In my house, it was often just avoidance. Years went by like that. Ordinary years, birthdays, school plays, holiday dinners, work schedules, grocery lists, and the small delays kept stacking. I delayed the hard conversation because we had company coming over. I delayed the apology because I was still mad. I delayed the question because I didn't want the answer. I delayed saying the tender thing because it felt awkward and I didn't want to sound foolish. I delayed visiting my sister because life was busy and the drive was long, and there would be time later. There was always a reason that sounded responsible. That's the part people don't talk about. The slow damage doesn't come with sirens. It comes with reasons. My kids grew up in a house that was kept, not always held. I don't say that to be dramatic. It's just the truth. They weren't neglected. They were fed. They were clothed. They were safe. But there's a difference between being safe and being seen. I can admit that now. It doesn't make me a monster. It just makes me a person who didn't notice what she was trading away. I remember one night when my daughter stood in the doorway of the kitchen. She was maybe 16. She didn't come in all the way. She hovered there, like she wasn't sure she had permission to exist in the room. I was washing dishes. Of course I was washing dishes. She said, "Can I tell you something?" And I said, without turning around, "Make it quick. I have to be up early." I didn't say it mean. I said it practical, like a good mother, like a responsible person. She stood there for another second. Then she said, "Never mind," and she walked away. I kept washing. That scene is not special. That's why it stays with me. Because it happened in one form or another 100 times. Little doors opening and closing. Little chances that asked for a softer version of me. I didn't think I was choosing against her. I thought I was choosing the next thing that needed to be done. I didn't understand how life keeps score. My husband and I also had our ways of missing each other. We didn't have big blow-ups. We had distance. We had long stretches where nothing was wrong and nothing was right. He would ask me if I wanted to go for a drive. I'd say no because there was laundry. He would suggest we sit outside after dinner. I'd say maybe tomorrow because I was tired. Tomorrow became a habit. He stopped asking. I noticed that. I remember the day I noticed it. I was putting away a stack of plates. He walked past the kitchen without looking at me, and it hit me that he wasn't avoiding me in anger. He was just done trying. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself people go through phases. I told myself we were fine. I was good at fine. Then time did what it does. The kids moved out, one by one. There were fewer shoes by the door, fewer voices, less mess. The house got easier in a way that should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like standing in a room after everyone left and realizing you never learned how to talk when the room was quiet. My husband retired. He was home more. I thought we'd naturally become closer, but we had built a life around tasks. When the tasks changed, there wasn't much underneath that we had practiced. He would sit in his chair and watch the news. I would move around him like a piece of furniture. Sometimes we'd say a few things. Sometimes we'd go half a day without speaking, not because we were fighting, because we had gotten used to not reaching. That's the slow damage. It doesn't look like tragedy. It looks like a calendar. And then there was the moment. Not the big moment people expect. Not a hospital scene with dramatic words. It was a weekday morning. I remember because the mail came late that day. My husband had been gone for a few months. Not divorced. Gone. Dead. I hate even saying it like that. It still feels too blunt, even now. I was going through a drawer in the hallway, the drawer where we kept random things, batteries, tape, old keys, the kind of drawer everyone has. My hand touched a small envelope. It had my name on it, my full name, the one people used to say when they were being serious. I sat down on the floor right there, not because I planned to, because my knees did it for me. Inside was a note, short, his handwriting, careful, like he didn't want to smudge it. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a poem. It wasn't a speech. It was just him, saying he was sorry for the times he shut down, and saying he knew I cared a lot, and saying he loved me, and saying he wished we had talked more. That was it. No blame, no anger, no big revelation, just a man trying to leave something clean behind. And my first feeling wasn't the kind people want to admit. My first feeling was irritation, because it was too late, because he was making me feel something when I had finally started to get through mornings without crying, because now I had to hold this note like a weight. And then the irritation turned into something uglier. It turned into the knowledge that he had been alone in our house while I was right there, that he had reached and reached in small ways, and I had answered with dishes and laundry. And later, I sat on that floor with that note and I realized something that should have been obvious. Time doesn't just pass. Time closes things. It closes mouths. It closes doors. It closes chances. It closes people. And there isn't always a final conversation to wrap it up nicely. Sometimes it just ends on a Tuesday, and the drawer still has tape and batteries and old keys. After that day, I didn't change into a new person. That's not how it went. I still woke up the same. I still made tea the same way. I still forgot why I walked into a room sometimes. I still had days when I felt nothing and days when everything hurt. But I stopped telling myself comforting stories. I stopped saying, "It's fine," when it wasn't. Not out loud. I didn't suddenly become honest with everyone. I became honest in the quiet places. I started noticing how often I had used being needed as a way to avoid being known. How much I liked the safety of usefulness. How it let me skip the risk of tenderness. There is a kind of peace in being useful because nobody asks what you feel. They just thank you and move on. And there is a kind of peace in being alone because nobody can disappoint you. Nobody can ask for the part of you that you kept locked up. That's the peace I found, if I'm going to be truthful. It's not the peace I thought I wanted when I was 40. It's not the peace I imagined when I was 60. It's the peace of having fewer opportunities to get it wrong. Some days I sit by the window and I watch people walk their dogs. I see couples. I see them bicker over nothing. I see them laugh for a second and then go quiet again. And I wonder what their kitchens feel like. I see women my age with friends, and I can tell which ones practiced closeness. They lean in. They touch each other's arms when they talk. They don't rush away from a heavy moment. I didn't practice that. I practiced keeping things running. My children call me, not every day. They have their lives. They tell me about work. They tell me about their kids. They ask if I'm eating enough. They remind me to be careful on the stairs. Sometimes there's a pause where I can feel something unsaid. I can feel the old distance still there, like a piece of furniture nobody moves anymore. They love me. I don't question that. I'm not starving for love, but love isn't the only thing people need. Sometimes I hang up and I realize I don't actually know them the way I thought I would. I know facts. I know schedules. I know what they like in their coffee, but I don't always know what makes them feel small at night. I don't always know what they're afraid of. I don't always know what they wish I had been curious about. And they don't always know those things about me either. That's on both sides, I suppose. But I know what I did. I know what I avoided. So this is what life feels like now. It feels quiet. It feels like walking through rooms you kept spotless for years and realizing cleanliness isn't the same as comfort. It feels like remembering 100 little moments too late and knowing none of them were important at the time. That's the part that makes you feel foolish. Not stupid, just human. It feels like holding a note you can't answer. Sometimes I think about how many people are living inside later right now. Not because they're bad, because they're tired, because they're busy, because they're trying to be responsible, because they don't want a hard conversation at the end of a long day. I recognize that life. I lived it, and I know how it looks from the inside. It looks reasonable. It looks like love in work clothes. It looks like a person who can be counted on. It doesn't look dangerous. But I also know what it looks like from where I'm sitting now, with a quiet house, with an old drawer that still smells like tape and metal and dust, with a note that says what I needed to hear and what I needed to say, and neither one matters anymore in the way it should have. Peace came to me when the arguing stopped, because there was nobody left to argue with. That's the honest version. And it sits heavy in the chest, even on a day that looks perfectly calm. I'm 78, and I don't miss the noise. I miss what the noise was covering.